What's up? It is Sam here, and I have an awesome video for you today. First, I'm going to show you the back testing that we did to prove that this is more accurate than the polls, and then we're going to get into our YouTube rankings for the Democratic candidates who are running for president. So, if this is your first time here, what's good? My name is Sam, and for those of you who are returning, it is good to freaking see you. Okay, so first of all, we're going to take a look at the Google search volume and the YouTube search volume for Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump in 2016. And then we're going to take a look at the polling data associated with that before we get into the YouTube rankings of the Democratic candidates. So real quick, this is the for the entire year 2016, we have Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. This is the web search on the largest website on the frickin' planet. And you can see here who clearly had a lot more attention. Donald Trump had a lot more attention, so this is right around when the election happened, so you can assume that this last tail bit of data here, you can just ignore that. But from right here, for the whole year leading up to it, you can see that Trump had more attention. So then let's go over to YouTube, and it's actually even more. Look at the margin here in terms of the attention between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton on YouTube. And we know what the results on that were. So let's take a look at the polling data. Well, for that, we pulled up Real Clear Politics, and they aggregate a bunch of different polls who put together like Bloomberg or IBD and The Economist and Fox News and ABC, CBS. They run these polls, right? And we can see the sample size here of like 799 people or 1,000 people or 3,000 people. This is reported on by the media as being representative of what the collective of America thinks. And yet, we can see what the collective of America thinks based upon the actual searches on the two largest sites on the frickin' planet. So, with that being said, let's move into our YouTube rankings, where we take a look at the candidates' search terms on YouTube. So when you go to YouTube, or anybody goes to YouTube in the United States and they search for any one of the candidates' names, YouTube tracks that. And we get to actually take a look at this in 3 separate time periods: the 12-month, the 3-month, and the 1-month. And we stack rank the candidates in each one of those time periods based on who had the most amount of search volume down to who had the least amount of search volume before we take it, before we take an average. And when we take a look at this, we can see that the Emerson and The Economist and Mammoth, as well as CNN, the past 4 polls that have come out for the national polls have all had sample sizes of 500 or less. 500 people responded to these polls, and then CNN and Mammoth and The Economist and Emerson report that this is representative of what the collective of America thinks. This is laughable at best, and at worst, it's detrimental to the country. So I took all of that data to put into a spreadsheet, and it came up with the top 5 candidates are Andrew Yang, Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, and tied for 4th, the 2 women here, Tulsi Gabbard and Elizabeth Warren. So let's dive a little bit more into the data here. And as we can see, let's see if there's any big changes. We see that Pete lost a little bit of room. He lost a little bit of steam here. Andrew's been #1 across the board on YouTube. And if we actually look here, we can see that. I'm just going to remove this, where with him, it does look like he has the most clear trend. I'll leave Bernie out there as well, just for a reference point. But we see Bernie and Andrew. Bernie is in red and Andrew is in blue. And we can see in blue that it does appear that there's a clear trend up and to the right, where Bernie's got these spikes and whatnot. It's still remaining relevant. So Bernie's actually #2 in this, and he's moved up 1 spot. This could also be for what happened in terms of him interacting with Elizabeth Warren. I think that helped him out a lot when she came up to him at the last debate. Joe Biden lost a spot. He's been back and forth in terms of second, and this is I think the 8th edition of these rankings, where he's been between second and fourth place and bouncing back and forth every single time we do them. Elizabeth Warren, again, because I think what happened with Bernie, she's moved up multiple spots. So just because there might be negative attention associated with Elizabeth Warren, negative attention is still positive in the sense that if you have another 10 million people who become aware of you because of this negative attention of acting this way on stage, there's going to be some percentage of those people who are going to be like, hey, she was in the right. Like, Bernie called her a liar, or whatever the case of the semantics of the details were. There's going to be some people who agree with Elizabeth. And that negative attention can give her more people if she's good enough to move forward. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are down below in the comment section, and we can actually talk about them. Where we get into the YouTube analytics, and if you use the hashtag Stolt, just like Mad Rocky did here, then we can actually talk about your comments. So this is from Mad Rocky. Thank you so much for the comment. You made a point about data points. Probably it doesn't even matter if non-Americans are part of this data because we are all more or less the same people. I agree, 100%. A strange difference is that Trump supporters from my country often like Putin. I would assume that this is not the case for the US. What country are you from? But to be honest, as a European and Yang supporter, I prefer Putin to most American politicians too. From my point of view, I judge politicians from other countries much more about their foreign policy and have noticed Russia much less negatively than America has in the last 20 years. Interesting. I think when you look at it on a macro global basis, there's a couple people who have more awareness abroad than most of the rest of the field of candidates here. Bernie Sanders has the most exposure in terms of search volume outside of the US, and then followed up behind him is, and we're not including Trump in this, but on the Democratic side, we have Bernie Sanders, and then Andrew Yang have the two most in terms of search volume. Bernie Sanders, I think, was more in Europe, and Andrew Yang was more in Asia in terms of the popularity associated with them, which could make sense, right? Like, European has a more of like established or potentially older points of view on things versus Andrew Yang is Asian, right? So you would think maybe he would be more popular in that part of the world. So thank you so much for the comment. It is interesting to see people from around the world also following along. I'd like to hear what you think of what is going on with the politics around here, and what you think of like how the polls are that we went over at the beginning versus how like actually looking at the data, because I think that there's at least an opportunity to have a conversation around maybe doing things in a more thoughtful or considerate way to understand the data of who the American public's actually interested in. The next comment is from BBPIYO. How do you account for a boomer who doesn't use a computer and vote majority of the time? Well, so the boomer population, in terms of voter participation in 2020, according to Pew Research, is actually expected to decline. And when you look at the data, there's a lot of people who use Google, and there's a lot of people who use YouTube, whether that's searching and or we have a YouTube ranking based upon the candidates' actual channels. So I look at my YouTube analytics, and people who boomers I think are 55 and older, and I can actually see if I pull that up right now. The audience here from 55 and older for myself is around 12% on my analytics here, and I swear a lot, and I don't act super professional. So to still have somewhere around 13%, 12% of people who are 55 and older consuming this, I think that to say that they don't use computers is yes, there's a certain percentage of them that don't, but I think that there's a tremendous amount that do. And when we look at the amount of data, say from Google search volume, from YouTube search volume, from the people who are using YouTube and actually consuming the content, as well as like the Facebook rankings that we do, because there's a tremendous amount of boomers who also use Facebook. I mean, come on, there's like 2.5 billion people who actively use Facebook on a monthly basis. Yeah, that's globally, right? So in the US, it's substantially smaller, but that's still a ton. That's still a ton of baby boomers. And when we compare that to, say, Real Clear Politics, which has like sample sizes of like less than 500, the biggest one here is from Morning Consult with 12,000 people. But still, 12,000 people. It's better, right? That's definitely better, but it's still a tiny sample size relative to 300 million people, in my opinion. So appreciate the comment, but I think that any way is not going to be perfect and satisfy everybody. But I think something that's more inclusive to capture like a bigger swath of actual understanding is going to give us a more relevant picture of what's happening than like the polling data would, in my opinion. If you guys agree with that, share this video with somebody or press that thumbs up button. There's links in the description if you want to jump over to Twitter and say what's good, or Instagram. Appreciate you guys, and I'll talk to you soon.